Good evening, everybody. This is the Board of Education meeting for Wednesday evening, August 16th, here at Frederick School in the Falcon Room. We need a roll call and call to order, please.
Mack.
Here.
Braden.
Here.
Nash. Absent. Albert.
Here.
LaCroix.
Here.
Miller.
Here.
And Weedman.
Okay, we have quorum. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, need a motion to approve this evening's agenda, please.
So moved. Second.
Okay.
Miller.
Aye.
Mack.
Aye.
Albert.
Aye.
Braden.
Aye.
And LaCroix.
Aye. All right, thank you very much. Do we have any public comments signed up at this moment over there? Seeing none, we'll go on to board reports. I think I started here last week. We can start here again. No board reports, okay.
I didn't have details last time, so I just want to share the invitation again to join me on August 27th at 2 p.m. for a rally and walk for gun violence prevention. It's at Cook Memorial Park in Libertyville. And we all know that gun violence prevention affects our education system and affects all of us, and so I'd really love to see more of us there. This event is hosted by State Rep Laura Favor-Diaz and a local Moms Demand Action chapter. Yes. 2 p.m. And part of the event will include time to lament and grieve what we have lost as a nation with all the gun violence, and then steps and actions we can take in hope for what could be better. Yes, Cook Memorial Park in Libertyville. And I can send something via email so you have it.
Mr. LaCroix, no? I just was able to attend the little opening concert from the band thing over at GMS, which was they had done the band camp for a week and had a really great little concert outside. So congratulations to Mr. Thomas and all those kids that learned those songs in the first week. All right. Dr. Glickman.
Well, school's starting next week. And we've been very busy getting ready. As you can see, as you walked your way through this school, things are shiny and bright. Our O&M team has been working hard. We've had so many staff members in and out of the buildings getting ready, administrators making plans, our school administrative assistants keeping everybody in a line. Things are going beautifully, and we're very excited about it. School starts next Wednesday. We have staff coming on Monday and Tuesday, excuse me, for our Institute days. I'm going to hand this over to Dr. Woke, who will talk about some staffing matters, and then I know he'll be handing it over to Mrs. Gluck, who will talk about new staff days that we've had in the last couple of days.
So we have had a very active hiring season. As of 6:34 Wednesday evening, we have hired 51 new certified staff members this summer and 13 new PSRP staff. Those do not include the individuals who are still in the process of getting their fingerprints and paperwork all put together, nor does that include the 4, potentially 5 people that I'll be meeting with tomorrow to hire on. 2 certified staff and 2 paraprofessionals, possibly 3 paraprofessionals. That also does not include any of our 11 and 12-month staff who have been working over the summer or just came back in early August. So very active, and we are getting our openings filled. Thank you. Now I'm going to turn it over to Amy Gluck, who will share a little bit about what's been happening the past couple days with these individuals.
Yeah, so we are so excited about what has been going on the last 2 days with our new certified staff, and we have one more day tomorrow, so even more excited about what is going to be coming then. We were able to meet all the individuals. We had a packed room in here. Everyone was able to meet our administrators yesterday morning, and then we brought them in here, and Amanda Pelser provided them all of their technology, which we know is the first thing everyone wants to have in their hands so they can be ready to go next week. So we got them all their devices, and they're ready to go with that. They met their mentors yesterday in person. Their mentors came, and we did some activities together, and were able to go back to their buildings yesterday afternoon. Today was super exciting and something new that we hadn't done in the past, and that was our instructional coaches came and led sessions that were role specific, so that teachers, our staff, all of our new staff were able to get their hands on and start learning about our curricular materials and what it is they're going to be doing with kids next week. And so we heard incredible positive feedback from them, and it was really specific to what they're going to be doing. So super exciting, and we will continue tomorrow. We're going to have Dr. Woke come to talk about some HR pieces. We're going to do some more teaching and learning specific items, and each day they're having time back in their buildings in their rooms. So it's been super exciting. And I think I'm just going to keep going. Yep. And I'm going to talk. Oh, go ahead.
Can I just interrupt you? Just some, feedback loop. I happened to be out and about in town and ran into one of the. I don't know if she's an instructional designer. Anyway, one of your staff, and had echoed exactly what you just said. Said it was a fabulous day. She had so much fun meeting the new staff, and it was just a real high energy. And then she was really tired and wanted to go home.
I believe it. Yeah, it was really exciting. And so Monday, we will welcome back all of our staff, and we are starting together at Park Campus, all in the same place. We're going to welcome everybody, we're going to spend about an hour and a half together, just reviewing and going over some of our goals for this coming school year, and we're going to have some fun along with it. I'm not going to share exactly because we want some of it to be a surprise, but we we're really going to dig into going back to the work that we started last year and continuing some of that. Then our staff are going to move into their job-alike groups and just start digging into work together with some collaboration and getting ready for the school year. And then the rest of the time, over the rest of the day, Monday and into Tuesday, is in buildings. There will be some student services meetings where they're learning our new IEP system and platform, and multilingual department will be able to get together too. So we're gonna be able to really get to have some good conversations together next week and just jump right in.
All right, and finally, I want to talk for a moment about something that you will hear Leslie speak about when we are doing our strategic plan update, and she's talking about some of the communication matters. But I wanted you to hear about it from me as well. We are extremely excited. I know we keep using the word excited tonight, but we are, about a new district newsletter that will be an electronic newsletter. So what does it mean? It means that families will no longer be getting the message from the superintendent email. Instead, it will be a newsletter that comes from a variety of departments. So we're kind of divvying it up so that, sometimes there will be something from the teaching and learning department. Often there'll be something from the teaching and learning department, from O&M, specifically from multilingual, specifically from student services, from technology, and these will come every other week. So we're really excited about this. We think this will be a much better way to get information to our families. And of course, they'll also be posted on our websites as well. All of these newsletters will be coming to families through email. Why is that interesting to share with you? Because we are ending the era wherein families would every week or so get a phone call that said, This is Dr. Lynn Glickman, Superintendent of School District 46. We're not doing that anymore unless there's an emergency. So we'll continue to do that for actual emergencies, but for these just roll out, here's what's going on in the school district, it will come through people's emails. So we're pleased about that. So that's it for the superintendent's report today.
Are we still going to do them for late start? Or how are we going to do late start?
So
I sort of depend on the late start.
okay, so we appreciate that feedback. I'm just going to say we appreciate that feedback, and we will work out a plan. Yes? Thank
If
you.
I
That's
need to come
helpful.
up with my own plan, I'm okay with that.
It's appreciated.
I'm up early enough.
All right. Nope, that's appreciated. All righty.
All right, thank you, Dr. Glickman. Next is the consent agenda, including the personnel addendum that was sent a little bit earlier today to us. Need a motion to approve the consent agenda tonight, please.
I'll move.
I'll second that.
Okay,
Braden,
Aye.
LaCroy,
Aye.
Albert,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
and Mack.
aye. All right, moving along to our action items. We have two action items to vote on this evening. The first one being the motion to approve the fiscal year 2024 tentative budget and publish a legal notice for the public hearing of the fiscal year 2024 tentative budget scheduled for September 20th, 2023. I need a motion.
So moved.
I'll second.
Any questions or comments?
Mr. Wildman, just making sure there's no changes to what we saw in June? No significant
There will
changes?
be changes. There will be changes to what you saw in June. We have an improved fiscal position of about $600,000. There's been various net change. A net change to the budget would include we've actually got actual people hired, and we have their salary, so we put that in the budget. And the largest thing is that we've seen an increase in our EBF funding for fiscal year 24. So we have a net improved position of about $600,000. So I'm very pleased to be bringing that to you on September 20th. To do that, I have to get approval tonight to post for the hearing in the Daily Herald. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay,
Miller,
Aye.
Mack,
aye.
Braden,
Aye.
LaCroy,
Aye.
and Albert.
Aye.
Okay, the second item to vote on for this evening is the motion, they need a motion to approve the resolution for the hazardous road conditions, which I think we do every year, right?
Correct.
I'll move.
Second?
Any comments or questions on that one?
I have a
Yeah,
question
go ahead.
about, so it lists 460101, Route 120, St. Gilbert students. So are we supposed to list other schools within our boundaries too?
Only if it qualifies.
Can you say that again?
I said only if it qualifies. So if there was a hazard that we're not aware of for any of the, I'm not quite sure what school you would mean, St. Gilbert's and Westlake?
I guess so. I know there's a bunch of preschools too. I just wanted to make sure we were doing.
Oh,
our
no,
due
sorry,
diligence.
only for schools that we have to service, which would be Westlake and St. Gilbert's, because it's within our boundaries. And this gets filed with the Regional Office of Education, so that's why we file it on their behalf, because they don't have the ability to do this for themselves.
So do we need to list Westlake too?
If they have one, I'm not sure they have a,
Okay.
Yeah, this isn't
I
a
see.
listing of such schools, it's a listing of such hazardous
Hazards. Okay.
related to schools.
yes,
And it's,
exactly.
so Westlake wouldn't have one necessarily.
I don't think it would, unless it had one previously, when it was one of our schools and we didn't, I'm not aware of that.
And Chris, when you're talking about schools where we are required to service, I interpret that to mean schools where we're required to provide special education services if students qualify. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay,
LaCroy,
Aye.
Braden,
Aye.
Albert,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
and Mack.
Aye. Okay, great. Motion passed. Moving on to unfinished business, our first item up is the strategic plan update.
There we go. All right, board. You're getting used to us coming to you in the summer to talk about where we're going in the upcoming year regarding our strategic plan goals, and then throughout the year, continuing to talk about those goals. I'm very pleased about how we're doing this tonight because actually I am just introducing this to you and then I'm getting out of Dodge and the rest of the team is going to actually share the work of the upcoming year. I do want to mention that you're going to see the goal maps that you're used to seeing. We're not planning to review all of the work that's happened for the past few years unless we need to share something for context, but it's all there for you to look at. But our intention is really just to talk about the upcoming year. And as always, everything we're doing is focused on our mission of empowering learners, creating equity, and cultivating community. And I'm going to hand this over to Amy Gluck.
So I'm going to start by talking about our first curriculum goal, which is about to review and update teaching, learning, and assessment practices and materials through an equity lens to create culturally responsive learning environments. So you'll notice the beginning in that first column is about our equity work, and we've already shared our equity action plan with you, so we will be implementing that equity action plan, which also goes along with that next piece about updating school environments, which is part of our equity action plan in order to understand cultural responsiveness. So those two are connected. We'll continue to share updates related to that plan with you. For understanding of trauma-informed instruction, last year you may remember that we had Dr. Doug Bolton with us throughout the school year providing professional learning for our staff, and one of the pieces that he honed in on towards the end of the year were 7 strategies that teachers could be using within their classrooms. And so we'll be continuing to focus on implementation of those strategies at the classroom level. And then we're also going to continue professional development focused under the umbrella of social emotional learning. And we have many areas where we're going to be working on that with our new SEL coaches and also just spending some time continuing to implement all the strategies that Dr. Bolton gave us. For curricular review, there are 2 pieces on here. One is our social science job alike is going to be completing a review of what available resources there are for us in the area of social science to determine if there is a possible purchase for materials and for resources for us. It is possible based on what's out there that we may decide not to move forward with that, which is why it says for a possible purchase. So we're gonna spend some time doing research and determining if it fits our need. The other piece is in math. Our current math contracts for both Carnegie and Envision are up at the end of the 24-25 school year. So this year we are going to be using we will form a math planning and design team, a PDT, to start looking at what our resources and then also looking at other resources so that we're prepared for that 25-26 school year. So we're gonna spend a really good amount of time digging into that together. And then assessment work, we're going to continue to analyze assessments and analyze our data by student group, which goes along with our equity plan as well, and revise assessments based on that equity data. So I have another goal. I get the most up here, I think. The second curriculum goal is to investigate options for newer revised course offerings with emphasis on world language, dual language, and encore opportunities. So last school year we did explore possible revisions to the structure of the school day, including looking at encore options for grades 5-8. So through that, through the work that planning and design team did last year, we will consult with the Finance Committee for consideration and determine what feasibility and next steps we have based on the recommendations that that PDT determined. In addition to that, as part of that planning and design team, we spent some time with the help of Dr. Diaz looking at world language considerations for world language, and we will continue again to determine funding feasibility for that. And then something new for this year is that we're going to explore possibilities for dual language, and Dr. Diaz will be very heavily involved in that, and we will research program design and determine feasibility and next steps with a PDT for that as well, the planning and design team. And that's all I have for curriculum, and I am going to turn it over to Amanda Pelser.
Thank you, Amy. So I'm here to share about the strategic goal around technology, which is to develop, review, and communicate a comprehensive master technology plan on an annual basis, which focuses on equitable and engaging technology-rich learning environments to serve our students, staff, and community aligned with district goals. So under Create Comprehensive Master Technology Plan, that's something that I know has been presented to you, and we've made a lot of great progress, and we're going to continue to review that progress and see where our ongoing needs are. As far as classroom technology goes, all of the BenQs, which are lovely displays throughout all of our instructional spaces and are here in this room, have been installed, and we're going to continue to provide appropriate ongoing professional development for all staff around the BenQs and other areas of technology. When it comes to student and staff devices, we're going to continue to refresh on a cycle to make sure that devices are usable and in good shape. We are investigating options, which you'll hear a little bit more about later, to extend the life of the devices. And like I said, a little bit more about that coming soon tonight. As far as infrastructure goes, we are implementing infrastructure upgrades. We're right now in the process of upgrading our wireless and network infrastructure throughout the district, and we will continue to evaluate current infrastructure needs as we go. I'm going to pass it now on to Chris Wildman.
I have my own copy. Okay, so I'm going to read you the finance goal. It's review, expand and clarify financial practices to increase transparency and communication with a focus on aligning financial decision-making to district goals. So there was 3 areas that we wanted to focus on initially. The first one was the creation of the Finance Committee. Obviously, that's been up and running for several years right now. The Finance Committee does serve as our audit committee, and we will be using the next available date for us will be November 8th to coincide with the AFR, the ACFA to be presented to you, and then that evening our auditors, Miller Cooper, will be able to present the financial position of the district. So that's the first part. In regarding ongoing financial stewardship, we'll have financial projections at that meeting, just like we did last year and the year before. November has been the meeting we've presented those. And considering the feasibility of potential funding options to address adequacy and capital needs, that's an ongoing discussion with all the different people that we have at the table for that, World, our underwriters, which has formed most of the discussions about the funding proposal. Then we have increased financial transparency and communication. We launched the financial dashboard as part of the website that uses data that we upload to Forecast 5 Frontline and has a front-facing dashboard which shows our financial information on a quarterly basis. So that is up and running. That's available on the website right now. We obviously have our budget book, and we have all our board memos that we communicate fiscal transparency. And the focus for this upcoming school year is to display benchmarks, KPIs, key performance indicators, and more financial information. And I know that we had lots of robust discussions about that, but we really need to revisit that to get those up and running for the school year. And finally, improved decision-making with alignment of goals. We just talked about the supporting the feasibility studies for Curriculum Goal 2 and all the different PDTs. They will have a cost. They'll have a cost for program supplies, they'll have a cost for classrooms, they'll have a cost for staffing, and those need to be vetted, and the best place for that would be the Finance Committee as part of how we fund it. and each of those specific initiatives. And then obviously the final thing is continue expanding the long-range facilities plan. We're into the year three, and then we have to start looking at years 4 and moving forward. That concludes the finance goal. I'm going to stick around and introduce facilities and talk about it a little bit, and I'll hand it over to Roberta to finish off. So I'll read this one: review, expand, and clarify the comprehensive master facilities plan on an annual basis to continue to create equitable, quality learning environments, both inside and outside of the buildings, to serve our students, staff, and communities with the focus on aligning decision-making to district goals. So just a straight narrative, we were just discussing it as part of the last goal, continuing the priority work, because we need to fund years 3, which we have as that the rest of the 9.2 million, but how do we fund it in years 4 through 10? The second area is creating equitable facilities. We what did we do last year? Assessing facilities to consider equitable quality learning environments with staff and community input. That was the educational adequacy report. That was what we presented to you with all the different areas with costs. And then moving forward into this year, examining options for renewable energy, including solar projects at Avon, Meadowview, and Woodview. And then finally, but not least, creative use of land and buildings. Considering options for creating expanded learning environments, spaces at Avon, Frederick, GMS, and Park Campus, and considering the next steps, as well as actually what we're implementing, putting in place at Avon. To talk a little bit further about Avon, Roberto.
So some of the things that we're incorporating over at Avon, we're working with the PTO to make sure that we have outside learning space, and so we're doing our best to make sure that we support the PTO and that we continue to move this forward, for the betterment of the district.
Thank you. And then finally, communications with Leslie.
Good evening. The communications goal is to review, expand, and clarify communication methods to provide consistency and transparency with stakeholders and establish a CCSD 46 brand that supports the mission, vision, and values of the district. So for the communications goals, under Unified Accessible Communication and the new website design, we are creating a fiscal and facility needs section on the website. That's coming soon. Under our new logo, we are creating an equity poster with the new logo that will be coming shortly in this space right here. The design is complete. It is going to be printed. And those will also be in all of the school buildings as well. Consistent use of platforms. We are updating social media platforms based on our community feedback that I presented, was that a month ago? We are expanding our Instagram presence, backing off a little bit on Twitter because that's not really moving that well right now, and continuing our Facebook presence as we always have. And in community connections, CEC members create recommendations with parent organization leaders regarding engaging new parents and guardians in school activities. CEC and the Board of Education attend village and other community entity meetings. Create content highlighting district successes and share with community entities. District-wide electronic newsletters will be coming, which Dr. Glickman told you about this morning, or earlier today. And standardized building level communication. We are working, Mrs. Pelser and I have been working with the principals on their newsletters that will be going out shortly. Thank you.
Somebody took the clicker. You got it. Perfect. Thank you. All right. Board of Education, that is our update for you. Do you have any questions or comments? Yeah.
Thank you for the update. So I suspect going forward, we're going to hear more about some of these items in green that are happening this year on a regular basis. It'll be probably a standing board meeting topic because there's a lot going on this year, and I'm sure there'll be a lot to report to us on. Is that right?
That's true. It is very true. We hadn't intended on having a standing strategic plan update.
I didn't mean that
Yeah,
literally.
just,
I
yeah,
meant
absolutely.
it's going to end up happening that way.
And that is what always happens, right? I mean, there's nothing that you heard tonight. I would assume that you thought, oh, that's that's brand new. I didn't think we were doing that at all, right? Because these are all the things that we've been talking about from the get-go when we created this plan. Other questions or comments?
It's me again. So this is the last year contemplated in our strategic plan, right? I'm used to this map being kind of like years in the future. What happens at the end of this year? Do we start over again?
Right. So when we created the strategic plan, we actually didn't make a commitment to an endpoint. We said this is a 3 to 5 year plan, and this is year 3. So I think that will be something we need to talk about. You notice that many of these areas were, yes, we are continuing the work on X, Y, Z. So we may be positioned to be regrouping and thinking about future goals. I would guess, it would seem to me that tonight is too early to be having that conversation, but perhaps mid-year we do start thinking about, do we in the spring want to do that? Or do we have enough information on our current goals that without creating new goals, we know what next year looks like? So that's a great question.
Yeah, I'm sure you feel this way too, but it's been really nice to have this as kind of the overarching backbone of and scaffolding for everything that happens. And it wasn't pleasant not having this kind of thing in the background guiding what we do and what we are to be looking at from you and from your team.
Thank you.
So yeah, I'm glad to hear that that's been contemplated about what's going to happen in the future of this.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a decision we make together, right? But I would say right now is not the time to be making that decision. Okay. Other questions or comments?
Go ahead, sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. No, go ahead. You're good.
I was just contemplating that there's this very outdated saying that we should run, government or school districts like a business. I actually think that businesses should run their strategic planning like this school district. So I just want to commend you. Honestly, this is one of the best examples I've seen of this is the plan, this is year over year, we're working it, we're making progress, we're updating, we're on the plan, and we're aligning our spending decisions and where we focus our resources to the goals, like Jason said. And, just in my scope of what I see out there, I use our district as an example of great strategic alignment and strategic planning. So just wanted to let you know that.
Well, I would say we all appreciate hearing that. And I also wish to comment that the way we created the plan together allowed for flexibility in terms of the actual responsibilities of the district. And by that, I'm thinking specifically about an important focus of this school year that fits beautifully within the plan, but wasn't something that we talked about 2.5 years ago. That's our student services program review. Nowhere during strategic planning did we say we need to do a student service program review. But as we talk about equity and we talk about the needs of our students and we talk about the changing needs of our students, that became very clear, and it fits in beautifully with everything else we're doing. So I bring that up because the way we created it together gave us that flexibility. It was appreciated. Any other questions or comments? Christy, yeah?
I'll just add, just as a reminder, for those of us who weren't here, we did this in the middle of the pandemic, and I think it was hard to do that in the middle of the pandemic, and I'm so grateful because I think the transition out of pandemic into learning, again, not that we weren't learning during the pandemic, but just transitioning to out of the pandemic made it so easy because there were these goals that we were driving toward. So thank you for all that work.
Thank you for that. And I appreciate you bringing that up because that may be a very good reason for us to consider doing strategic planning again in the spring, that we are far enough away from the pandemic that we're able to consider what's available in the future. Yeah, because at that time, we were not in that place, right? None of us were. Anything else? All right, thank you, team.
Thank you very much. Okay, next on the unfinished business list is the update on the summer capital projects. Sorry, I should have said that earlier.
Yeah. So as you know, I'm newer to the district, and so this was a great opportunity for me to get out to the buildings, check on the projects, find out what's going on within the district. Some of the things that we're going to see are going to be reoccurring. We had building automation upgrades. We also had a regular summer cleaning, as well as so there's a few things that are going to be reoccurring. So I'll go through it. So our mission is empowering learners, creating equity, and cultivating the community. Strategic plan and board policy, that's something that we're very familiar with. As you see here, for Avon Center, we had a replacement of air handler unit on the original part of the building. We also had new basketball hoops on the south side of the gym. So now we have the ability to raise and lower. Also, the cost was split between Grace Lake Park District as well as summer maintenance. So here you'll see a picture of the new air handler, as well as a picture of the automation system and the basketball hoop. Also at Avon Center, talked about the collaboration that we have with the PTO and the support that we'll be providing for PTO. For Meadowview, we highlighted one of the pictures of the summer clean, how the entrance looks. We wanted to make sure that things are ready for students. It's a clean and safe environment for our students, as well as building automation and controls, and some painting and patching took place at Meadowview. On the picture on the right there, you'll see some of the old automation systems. So that's, those are the old components that we had, and we transitioned out of. At Prairie View and Early Childhood Center, we also did building automation systems. The new roof was completed. We did some indoor painting. We repaired the chillers. We also did some repair and patching for the blacktop, as well as normal summer maintenance. On the picture that's on my left there, you'll see some of the work that was taking place on the roof, and the picture on the right, you'll see when the work was completed. For Woodview, we again, building automation system, new roof completion, 12 new classroom doors that are currently being installed. We're expecting those doors to be completed very soon, as well as normal summer maintenance. I think one of the first board meetings that I attended, we talked about sustainability and potentially doing some of the white roofing. So I think this is what they were referring to when they were doing that presentation. As you see too, part of the regular summer maintenance was defining some of the work that we had to do outside, like painting some of the curves, and then you have a picture of the roof there. For Frederick School, we also had building automation, controls upgrade, and you see one of the boxes there for train. We did some painting as well as summer maintenance. As you can see, some of the hallways, look very presentable. And as you walk around the building, you'll see that, that's something to look forward to when the students are coming back. At Grace Lake Middle School, we did building automation as well. Hallway painting, a lot of the hallway painting is gonna, it's a big school, right? And so that's something that's gonna continue. We did and refinished the floors for both the small and the large gym. We had routine summer maintenance, and we have a dishwasher that's currently being installed. We plan on that being installed before students return. You'll see, the big pile of some of the old controls, as well as the gym floor that was completed. At Park Campus, building automation, roof work that continued, patch and painting of walls, and routine summer maintenance. On one of the pictures, you see some of the new boxes for the automation system, as well as a completed hallway. Some of the training that is going to continue for O&M and that will be ongoing is updated standards, team building with GSF. GSF is our contracted cleaning company that we have in the evening. Also sustainability training that will be ongoing, new technology for operations and maintenance, universal training of all buildings, and we're going to continue training with our insurance company as well. We're going to complete unfinished work and then prepare for remaining work of the 3-year priority capital improvement plan. All right, thank you. Do we have any questions?
I know you're new, so if you don't know the answer to this question, it's fine. I was just curious, what does the sustainability training entail or include?
So for the sustainability training, we switched over to Pathosans, and so switching over to Pathosans as well as switching over to Ecolab. So with the Ecolab program for soap, for the soap dispensers, we have so the refillable cartridges now, and there's a huge reduction of plastic, right, that's going to happen. Part of that training is making sure that all our employees know how to, implement that, and make sure that we continue the training for them to utilize Pathosans. Pathosans is also not a chemical. It's they use salt and water, and basically, that's what they use for the cleaning, here in the district. And so we're going to continue to collaborate with these companies so that we're doing things like that. We're reducing plastic. Basically we're reducing our carbon footprint, and making sure that our staff is aware and the benefits that go along with it.
Can I just jump in? There's one more area. It's we talked about composting. We made a presentation to you in March. So we talked about Pathosans, talked about Ecolab, and the final one was the composting in the front of the house we used to talk about, right? Remember that presentation? So that's already implemented at GMS and Park in the kitchen, and we'll be bringing that to the front area where students are composting. So his staff need to be trained how to do that. So they're the 3 areas.
Thank you.
So I just want to say there's nothing like hit the ground with your feet right as you start. So thank you so much for getting going so quickly. Looks like you've accomplished a ton in just a really short amount of time. So thank you for that. I did have, I also just, again, I'm grateful for the installation of the automated building systems. Mm-hmm. And I'm hoping that maybe we'll hear more about the energy efficiencies, maybe a KPI at some point. So thank you for those too, because I'm sure, again, being new to the district, I'm sure it was a lot to wrap your head around. So thank you so much for getting that going. And the white roofs, amazing. And then also the intergovernmental agreement with the Park District. So my question was also about the sustainability training, but you've already answered it. Mm-hmm. But just thank you for focusing on all of those things and listening so well to our previous meetings. Appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I'm sorry.
Sorry, Jason. Sorry. My colleague has a question. Yes, sir.
It's actually a question and a comment, both of them based off of pictures I saw in your presentation. Seeing the pictures of the control units in the new buildings made me wonder about, I don't think we've had a solar update in a while. I wouldn't mind if maybe that's something, that's probably a discussion for a new agenda item, but can work with Chris. I think it's been a little while since we've heard a solar update about, you know, what kind of energy savings we're seeing by the solar panels.
Yes, we had a relationship with Performance Services to actually give you those, but we're no longer under contract with them because we now own the system ourselves. So we'll have to think about how to craft that presentation for you in terms of savings and all the other good stuff that they've presented for you in the past.
Yeah, no rush, just something that's been on my mind and it sparked me. And then the other comment I had was about the floor of the old gym at GMS. That gym floor was probably the same as when I went there in the 1980s, and it just looks like you took off about 80 layers of shellac. It looks amazing. It looks like a different floor. I mean, but it was just, you just sanded it down and...
Yeah, so they did some drum sanding and then refinished.
Yeah.
And so now the floors are not oil-based, they're water-based.
Yeah. I mean, look at that room. It looks so much brighter. That room was always so dark when you walked in there, and now it looks like...
Yeah,
amazing.
I didn't get a chance to see it before. I got a chance to see it after, so I'm trusting you on that.
It was like walnut colored on the floor. It was really about the color as the bleachers that you see on that picture. So thank you.
Yep. Thank you. Any other questions?
You know what? I do have one more. I'm sorry. Did I interrupt anyone? Okay. We're doing a lot of painting. Is it? And if you don't know this, that's fine. I'm not trying to catch you off guard. But is it low VOC paint or no VOC paint, or is it just regular paint? Do you know?
And I don't think I can answer that right now. I can check though. I can check and come back with an answer for you.
Great. No worries. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, last unfinished business item is the funding proposal update.
Okay. Board, first of all, I'm going to ask for your patience because I'm going to be reading a lot of my presentation to you. That is not my preferred presentation style, frankly, but this information, language is, precision in language is really very important. So I know you'll understand that. Last week, we had a special board meeting to discuss gathering feedback from our community regarding the potential of putting a funding proposal on a ballot in 2024. Tonight, I'm providing a brief summary of what was discussed at that meeting. And as always, our focus is on empowering learners, creating equity, and cultivating community. And you'll actually see those topics on some of the slides. I shared this timeline last week, which includes all of the work that has already occurred to assess the needs of our school district. And this included a variety of reports from our architects and a demographer. We also held a variety of meetings with many stakeholders last spring in order to gather information and collect feedback. Based on your feedback from last week's meeting, next month we will kick off a public information program that will be followed by research to gather feedback from our taxpayers about the possibility of bringing forth a funding proposal to the community. It is important to note that no decision has been made, except that last week you said, yes, please go out to the community to gather feedback on the potential of a referendum. That's the only decision that's been made. As you've said, inform people and get some feedback. This slide provides both the major and minor work that needs to be completed in the next 10 years, as per the facilities assessment that was completed in November 2021. This is the work that must be completed in order to protect the facilities and grounds that we already have. Projects such as paving, roofing, plumbing, and HVAC improvements have been assigned along a priority timeline. In addition, There is an annual district maintenance that must be completed, such as flooring and casework. That's at the bottom. We do that every year. And we just talked about it about 3 minutes ago, didn't we? And as you can see, there's a lot of facility maintenance ahead of us. Last spring, we held 2 meetings with a citizen task force. And that task force composed of a representative group of district taxpayers, was convened for 2 meetings to help vet a possible funding proposal to address operating and capital facility needs. The task force will meet again this fall, actually in November, to review public opinion research and make another recommendation to me about the timing and composition of a potential referendum. So I'm going to go over that again. We give information to our public. We gather that feedback. The task force looks at all that feedback. They make a recommendation to me, and I make a recommendation to you. That's how that follows through. All right, this is the slide that has our empowering learners. Okay, if you can look, it's really, really hard to see, but if you look way at the top on the left side, you will see empowering learners, creating equity, and cultivating community. And I mention that because these are topics that our task force talked about as they were considering what the needs of the district are. The task force discussed and prioritized the many needs of the district. Unfortunately, not all of these areas that you're looking at here will be recommended, as a funding request cannot possibly cover all of these areas. However, the task force was unanimous in the recommendation that addressing the already identified maintenance needs of the district is the highest priority. We cannot consider potential improvements to our facilities unless we first commit to maintaining what we already have. And that brings us to the plan that I brought to you last week that I'm reviewing here. And that plan is to share and test a $6 million limiting rate proposal, which would address the district's highest priority needs, including addressing those maintenance and infrastructure needs, updating libraries and media centers, and I gave you more information about that last week, reconfiguring and renovating student support spaces to make them more right-sized for the needs of our students and teachers, attracting, training, and retaining quality teachers, maintaining class sizes, and protecting current programming. And this would not require a tax rate increase. However, we also talked about testing 2 questions in a hybrid poll that'll be a part of the information we get back from the community. So one of those questions would be no tax rate increase. That's the one I just showed you. That's covering all of that information. But also, if you go back to our strategic plan, you remember that we were investigating the possibility of adding world language to our curriculum for our upper grade students. We can't do that with our current funding situation. So we also are talking about asking a question that is a tax rate increase that would support world language programming. So no tax rate increase and potentially a little bit of money back to our taxpayers once our current funding needs roll off the rolls. I didn't say that well. That's why I have a script, right? Once that debt rolls off in 2025, but also asking, or can we increase a little bit and be able to add in world language programming? We recommend moving ahead with sharing and testing the proposal with the broader community this fall. We believe this is the right time because debt is rolling off, so we can do this work without a tax rate increase, unless we add in the world language. And the district's need is now. It's urgent. Sharing this proposal and gathering additional public input will give you, the board, additional information needed to make an informed decision about the timing and composition of a potential ballot initiative. So that was my recommendation that I gave to you last week. We believe it addresses the critical needs. It's rooted in the strategic plan adopted in 2021 and that we just reviewed a little while ago with you. It incorporates a lot of community input. It's vetted by a representative group of citizens and it respects taxpayers. And finally, I want to go through the timeline and next steps with you. So this slide shows you what we've already done. I'm not going to review all of that with you, but that's all of the work that happened in January, actually some of it was before January, through this past August. Here we are, it's almost September to November. From September to November, we'll be doing a lot of community outreach. We'll be sending mailers to all of the taxpayers in our tax base about the needs of the district. We'll be doing presentations, some inside the district and some outside the district. For example, we have scheduled evening meetings at Frederick Park and Avon, and we'll have a Spanish interpreter at our Avon presentation. We're also in conversation with a number of leaders throughout the community about going out and speaking with groups out in the community. We'll be making and posting informational videos, and we'll be sharing information on our website and through social media. So you get the idea. Lots of information to our constituents and our taxpayers. From November to December, we'll be gathering information back from the community via mail surveys and hybrid polls, which are done through phone calls and text messages in 2023, right? This work will help inform you of what the community thinks about the possibility of a referendum question. And all of that would lead to you, the board, making a decision about whether or not to put a referendum question on a ballot in 2024. And if so, what exactly that referendum question should be. And should the district do this during the March 2024 presidential primary or the November 2024 presidential election? And if you do decide to move forward, here's the work that would then occur. A citizen-led campaign to move the referendum forward. And there's a lot of work in there, but that has to be citizen-led, and I know you heard about that last week. That can't be the work of the district. That's work of a citizen group. And this is a reminder of that. So the first three parts, that's the district's work. The last part is a ballot initiative that's committee funded if you choose to move forward. And board, please expect some kind of a funding proposal update if at all or many upcoming board meetings. Some might be much less formal than this. I wanted to go through some of what happened at last week's special board meeting. But I want you to know that I'll be regularly updating you about the work, about this work. Any questions or comments or thoughts?
Yes, I do. Thank you for this. And as I said on last week, I'm definitely in support of this proposal. But my support is a thumb sideways. And so I just would like to share this with the board. I think our board has heard that land use is material to our stakeholders. I think we've heard it in a lot of different places over a lot of time. And what we've heard is that the environmental, the aesthetic, and the health impacts of our building exteriors, they matter. The land matters. And those are not reflected as high priority issues in this proposal, and I think they need to be. And I don't say that just out of the last few community cafes, although it has come up in all three of the last ones. And we've seen attendance increase from 14 to 50 people in those or more in those cafes. So this isn't just something we have heard once in a while. We've also heard it through, if we take a look at our sustained volunteers, over at least a decade and a half, if not a lot more, we've had sustained volunteer support at our schools and multiple schools. We've got gardens at Woodview, we've got an outdoor classroom at at Meadowview, we have gardens at Prairie View, and we have now a whole lot more at Avon as well. That's primarily PTO funded and guided. And it's part of our strategic plan. Creative land use is already a component and something that was identified in the strategic planning process. So I think we've heard over time that land use matters, but it's not reflected as a high priority issue, and I think it needs to be. We've also heard from our secondary stakeholders. The village has a sustainability plan and a sustainability coordinator. We've got library solar panels being installed. We have former mayors and state reps who secured funding for open space, and we've got new open space acquisitions. So we hear that in those secondary stakeholder communications that we've got, other than the task forces that have been very thorough. So I guess my ask, my thumb up, would be to include a bullet point in that referendum proposal that would use some sort of language that would let the people know that have shown up to a lot of our community cafes, and then over time to our volunteers, that the things that they want are pretty simple and pretty cost effective. They want benches and they want signs. They want connectivity to the pedestrian and bike paths, and they want an increased tree canopy. So those are, I think that's an easy way and an opportunity to tell our secondary taxpayer or stakeholders that we've been listening and that they have co-created this proposal with us. So that would be my ask, that we would add that to the proposal before we go out to our community.
Other questions, comments?
Can you remind me of the history of world language in the district? It's not that we've never had it, correct? And Jim's not here to give us the,
Sure.
Jason might
Sure.
remember, but I know this is something that we've had and not had, correct?
That's correct. So it did exist in the district, and I believe back when an operating referendum did not pass, at that point programs were cut, and that was one of the programs that was cut, and we weren't able to bring it back since then.
So if we look back at your very first slide, sorry, I'm
2004.
trying to scroll with.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's kind of that red line. That is really when world language exited, when the operating rate measure
I believe
failed.
so. Is there anybody
I mean,
with more
maybe we
information
don't
to add?
know exactly, but okay. I was pretty sure
Sure.
that was the case, but I think, just an important part of the narrative, I
Yeah.
think. So thank you.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's so helpful. When were you? Okay. Okay, so that makes it longer ago. Thank you, that was really helpful. Longer ago than or more recently rather than the 2004, 2005. Thank you.
Jim would have been able to attest to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was like 2010 that it exited.
Which would make sense, or at least, yeah.
Because I remember going to a meeting about that.
Thank you for the recap of what transpired at our special board meeting last week. I
Yep.
just wanted to reiterate my excitedness, my enthusiasm for the plan. I think it's the right thing to do for our district to make sure that we have the resources we need so we can stay current on our maintenance, so we can bring our facilities up to standards. We've been deferring maintenance on our facilities as part of our plan to balance our budget for a long time. It's a great opportunity to properly fund our schools and make sure we have a wonderful school district now and in the future. So I think it's a good plan, and I'm excited to see where it goes. Thank you.
I would like to reiterate as well, so thank you for the summary and the update. I would reiterate my support from the special board meeting last week. I'm particularly attached to, of course, the world languages as a world language teacher myself, but in light of some things that are happening across the profession in the nation today, a university, West Virginia University is cutting their entire world language major program. I mean, this is eliminating from a major university a source of equity and connection with the world around. If that is something, I know we're small, but if we, do bring back world languages, that remains at the cutting edge of something. And then with Mrs. Miller's comment, I do think it's an opportune time to make sure that we do have the language that we've been talking about for multiple years surrounding the things that she mentioned this evening. So I would encourage us to make sure that remains. I don't know how that would fit in there, but make sure that we give it its due course, because we've been talking about some of those things for a lengthy period of time, and I think we can get those in there as well. So thank you again for the update.
And I just want to add, I agree with what you said and what Mrs. Miller said, because if you look at that chart, it's outdoor learning areas at all schools, the only one that checks all 3 boxes of our empowering learners, creating equity, cultivating community. And it is a very minor price tag compared to other things, the simple things that some of those secondary stakeholders are asking. And those are the voters who don't have children in the schools. So I feel like we do need to listen to what they have been telling us.
All right, so I'm just going to ask a question for clarity. Is it the request of the board that we go back to the consultants with whom we're working and ask if there is a test question that we might also put into the polls? Because keep in mind, the board right now, we're not putting forth what the makeup right now of a referendum question would be. We're asking the community, is this what you would want to pay for? So is that your an additional polling questions?
Can I ask a clarifying question first?
Sure.
Do we know the composition of the group that worked on this? So more specifically, do we have a sense for, was there advocacy present for sustainable spaces, construction? Like, do we have a sense for what the demographics of this group look like?
Yes, there were, in fact, just today I sent an email to the people that were in that group, so it's very present for me. And yes, there were people present who were advocates for outdoor spaces, definitely.
Okay, thank you.
So my request is I'm looking specifically at the funding proposition, and it says, it identifies 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 high priority needs. Mm-hmm. And I think that I would want to work with Paul with the language of this, but the benches, whatever the umbrella term is, that be one of those, that we add a 7th bullet to that to make sure that it's explicitly addressed, and so that the people can see that their feedback has been, that they co-created this with us, is what my intent was. I don't know how
Maybe it already fits in the one that is the reconfiguring student spaces.
Well, it doesn't currently, because, I mean, to be honest with you, because currently those are specific to student
academic spaces.
Yeah, and there were special education
interior
spaces.
Yeah, mm-hmm.
Those were all about interior spaces, yes.
I guess I'm just looking at the list. So do we, and I know you're cautioning us or telling us like where it fits is TBD, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just wondering if there's a sustainability wrapper for this whole thing as well. Just in terms of, I think what I hear even more so than like benches and trees is whatever we do, let's do it sustainably. And let's make sure that our practices of all of these check marks are sustainable. So I'm wondering if, this whole idea of here's what we're gonna do, but then how we're gonna do it is sustainable. And that may be very implicit, like to our architects. I think, they probably already think in that way. They're certified, LEED, et cetera. But I'm wondering if we just need to also make that very explicit that the way we go about this will be as sustainable as possible, because I think that's something we've all said is important, if that makes sense. Just another way to think about it.
Christy, are you suggesting that's an in addition to or a replacement for?
Neither. I'm suggesting that it's not a check mark. It's in how we talk about how we're going to do this. We say, we know that our community is invested in sustainability, so as we address maintenance infrastructure needs, update libraries, reconfigure student support spaces, and do these things, we're making a commitment to always do them with a sustainability lens, making sure that the products that we use and how we dispose of things, et cetera, are as responsible as possible as well. I think that is to me, addresses that core need for sustainability in a more holistic way, perhaps. So just another piece to put, and it would not change, it would maybe change the way that we talk about it with taxpayers in a narrative versus change the actual check boxes here or the list on the plan.
So you're talking about it representing it as more of an ethos as opposed to, and if you vote for this extra funding, Mr. Taxpayer, you'll get some park benches and trees and bike paths, right? That's kind of how you're saying it. And that makes sense to me too, but I have two thoughts on that. We did go through the process of engaging the community, and we did prioritize this with the community. You made the point last meeting that perhaps there was underrepresentation, or the way that that prioritization task or process broke down didn't give voice to that idea, or didn't give it the voice, the prioritization that you think you're hearing elsewhere. But I don't know how we don't let what happened in those meetings speak for itself. Because that was the intent of those meetings, right? But on the other hand, right, I like Christie's, or Mrs. Braden's idea that we talk about this as kind of all the things that we're going to do with this kind of mindset. And that addresses that. I don't know that, Mrs. Miller, you're talking about how you want the question worded, right? That's what started the conversation, and you think that strategically it's better for us to talk about those particular items in order to get better feedback on the question. Is that where you're coming from on it?
So a couple things are in my head. So first of all, I love the idea of just articulating to our community that everything we're doing is sustainable, and that's the process that we're using. So appreciate that. In terms of underrepresentation, that was a really small piece of just, I think the entire process includes the community cafes, it includes the stakeholder meetings, it includes the task force. To my knowledge, the information from the community cafe was not, at least I wasn't asked for it, so I don't know if it was shared at the task force meetings. And I wouldn't have expected it to be. So I was looking at community engagement as that whole timeline, and I'm wondering if we want to be really explicit that we've integrated the feedback that we got at every stage, and then make sure that the language in the referendum proposal communicates that back to the people who participated.
Do you think Mrs. Braden's proposal or suggestion does that?
I am excited about that. I would need to hear more about that.
Yeah.
And I think there is also value in using the language that they gave us. It would depend on what our goal is, I think, and what our definition of sustainability is, and I don't know that we have one as a board yet. So, does that answer your question? Did I answer your question?
Yeah,
Something.
I'm just wondering if it answers
My
Dr.
question.
Glickman's.
Well, so I'm actually thinking about one of those stakeholder meetings, and I know various board members came to each one of the meetings. I think we had one or two at each meeting, and I think it might have been at the second meeting where some of the topics that had been discussed, it was kind of like this heartbreaking moment where people realized, but we can't do this, and we can't do this, and we can't do this. And one of the things we talked about at that time is that our school district is at a really critical juncture right now, because we're not asking for anything because no decisions have been made, but we're not considering asking the community for extra funds because of special things that we want to do. In many ways, we wish that were the case, right? I bet each one of us could think of some really exciting things that we want to do. Frankly, those things came off the table because, and remember we talked about this last week too, that $6 million yearly influx of money that would come if the board chooses to go for referendum and if the referendum would pass. Half of that would be going towards our operating fund. As you know, we're at a $2.7 million deficit this year. We can't continue to live in that $2.7 million deficit year after year. You know that we'll be in really significant trouble if that happens. In addition, we have 7 years of a maintenance facility plan that is currently unfunded. So there's $3 million towards the operating fund when really we are, what is it, Chris, $17 million underfunded based on the state of Illinois' their calculation. And we're just asking for, okay, we're going to take 3 to keep getting closer. The other 3 is to mostly go for maintenance, work that must be done, roofs, flooring, all those things, right, that we were looking at. That's protecting for the taxpayers what they already have, right? The buildings, the work that we already have in front of us. And then we talked about, well, we've got library media centers that are pretty old school, right? We've all walked through them. They don't reflect what our what teaching looks like today. They just don't. And they don't reflect what our students need. So that became a high priority. And then we have our students who receive special services and the fact that we have just the wrong spaces, I guess I'm going to put it, for those programs, right? For the programs. We may have more than one program going on in one space. We may have furniture subdividing a classroom into more than one space. Those became the highest priorities of the group, not because other things aren't important, and certainly not because the outdoor spaces aren't important, but because they became the highest needs. I also want to share that our consultant talked with us a lot. Okay, I'm going to back up and talk about the critical moment that we're in, that we're not asking for special things, we're not asking for anything. The school board hasn't decided whether or not to go for a referendum, but if we do, we wouldn't be asking for special things, we're asking for things that are needed. The risk of a referendum not passing is really critical because we're not asking for special things, because we're asking for things we need. So when our consultants talk with us about his experience with what taxpayers tend to want, that became a part of the equation too, and I think that's important to know. All of those things fed into the work of the task force and frankly your administration as well. So I don't want to take your administrative team out of this equation. We spent a lot of time talking about what the most important needs for our students are. And that's what we've presented to you. That's what Paul and Chris and I presented to you last week, and that's what I reviewed with you today. Board, if you want to change it, you're the board, right? It's your decision. But that's what came out of all of that work.
I appreciate you refocusing that. That helped. I think you articulated some things that really were kind of in the back of my head, that we're in a situation where we're in a pretty bad shape financially, and we need some additional funding. And to the extent that these things that you're talking about, they are relatively low in cost, right? Should they be front and center in our thoughtful proposal to the community, right? These are things that perhaps we could do pay-as-you-go type of a situation, something like that. So maybe it's not part of the message on this big thing that we're trying to do with strong messaging around it already. That's my thought.
I guess I'll even further focus what Dr. Glickman shared, which is this referendum, the possibility that this referendum will go in March, when turnout is typically lower, it's taxpayers, but it's also voters, likely voters. And I think we have to understand that the referendum passes on a vote, and we also need to be, and I think this is where you're trying to refocus us, is we need to be data driven about who's coming in March and what they will say yes to. And I think that's really, really important, because we can't afford. One of the things I remember that our consultant shared with us was, he was like, what do you think, boiler or new gym? What was the answer? Boiler. Because voters want to protect, they're very much more interested in protecting what we have than in going and getting new things. And so I think it's not that we'll never go and get new things, but I think the message to the taxpayer is, we've made investments, we need to protect what we have, we need to improve what we have. And I think from a voter perspective, I want to be careful that we have an expert who's helping us figure this out, and I want to listen to him. So it does focus me as well.
So I don't think we're all that different in this, because I also appreciate that there has been a lot of work by the administration, by you, and we've gotten some really good information from the experts we've hired as well. And I think we also have equally solid data and information from what the community has valued over decades of work, and it's consistent. So we are in fact asking to protect the investments that they've already made in the connectivity of the bike paths. We're not asking for new paths, we're not asking for anything special. It's just a connection to the schools to make those bike paths more accessible, and it's complementary to what the village is working on right now and has been working on. So I absolutely agree that we don't want anything special. We do want to make sure that we're responsive to our public, and I think the way to do that is to say, we heard you, we want to protect what you have been investing in for decades prior to any of us sitting at this table. So I think they're complementary, and I think adding some very minimal language would not detract or I think if it was worded with our experts would buoy that message and would make sure that the secondary stakeholders who don't have children in the district, that their needs also are being met. Not just, we have instructional value and all of these are valuable, but there are their needs too, and they're not asking for a lot. They're just asking to have access to the schools through paths that are level and a bench to sit down on when their kids are playing in the playgrounds. So to me, I think that would garner more votes and it would make a more consistent message with what we've had. So I don't think I'm disagreeing with you. I think the request is to add to that.
I'm actually wondering if there are ways to get that work done outside of a referendum question. And I think that's what you were referring to, Jason. Frankly, to my knowledge, we have never cost out what a few benches would cost on some of our grounds. And I know we haven't had any deep conversation about the bike paths, which are village bike paths, at least in the in Grays Lake Village, right? Not in our other schools necessarily. So I don't have any knowledge at all right now as to how much extension would be needed on any property that we own. It would seem to me that that would be worth examination for the potential of inclusion in future budgets.
I think I hear Mrs. Miller saying that she thinks the inclusion of those kind of sustainability initiatives would improve the message. But I think that works to be done, right? And we'll find the answer to that out in the next step of our
that's what I'm saying.
Our process, right? So I don't know that we
Are we saying the same thing or are we not?
We're saying
I'm not sure.
different things.
Okay.
We'll find out. So I just twisted it a little bit from what you were saying. I think Mrs. Miller is contending that adding language around sustainability, even though it wasn't prioritized such in the task force work, her contention is that would improve the adoption of our questioning and the public research we're going to be doing to see if this is something that our community is interested in. And I'm saying that the proof will be in the pudding, right? We'll find out in our messaging. I don't think those what we're going to ask, the questions we're going to ask to see if there's an appetite for this,
Right.
hasn't been done yet.
That's correct.
So we can talk about that later.
That is correct.
Right.
So I guess that goes back to something I was asking much earlier, which is, do you want our experts that we're working with to include in their polling some questions that are about the importance of sustainability topics and the outdoor, and having accessible outdoor spaces to be a part of that polling. And I'm sure that they can include that in their polling. And then that will give you information that you need in order to understand, again, if we are going forward with a referendum question, and if so, what the makeup of that referendum question is, because that's not set in stone. All we brought to you was, this was what we came up with through the work of that task force. But the questions that we ask the community will be larger. And so we can make sure that this kind of question that you're bringing to the table gets included in that polling. And then we're not, that's scientific, let's just be clear. So we spent a lot of time at our last, at the special board meeting, talking about the topic of a bias, right? Of selection bias. There's not going to be any selection bias in polling. It's a very scientific method that's used. So then we don't have to wonder, right? Well, who came to the table? Who chose to come to that meeting? We invited lots of people, but we don't have to have that conversation at all. We're actually polling the public and seeing what's important to them.
And you're suggesting we can gather that data, and it won't be at the expense of any other data we're getting. It's not a scarce thing, a scarce bucket we're talking about.
No.
We can add that question and just get that information.
Absolutely, we can.
Then yes, 100%.
And that makes sense to do.
Okay, let's go ahead and do that.
Okay. Well.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I'm still here.
Got the new business list to get to.
All right, let's do it.
I think there's maybe I don't know that so it feels like maybe we have some siloing between like the secondary stakeholders, the community cafes, and the focus group or the citizen task force. So I think there might be some messaging, because if I'm on the citizen task force and I see that pop, and I thought in my discussion that we said that was not on our list, so I think we just need to reconcile, have that conversation, because I don't think the citizen task force went in it thinking that there was all this other data that was coming in. So that might be a consideration of what are they expecting to see based on the outcomes of
that
the
was
meeting.
a thought that I had as well, Mrs. Braden, and the way that, at least to me, the way that the citizen task force has come back and prioritized things is, all right, there's an operational focus that just has to happen.
Correct.
And then there's, what we know to be continuous improvement, right? Things that we can continuously to do to our indoor and outdoor to enhance the experiences, right, of our community. But I think, and that goes to my earlier first question, was what was the composition of this group, right? If this group is representative of the various stakeholders in our community with divergent interests that included outdoor learning spaces, I don't feel comfortable deviating from these people that we asked to come and provide their perspectives and give us a prioritized list, that if we were to go out and ask for a referendum, right, this is what they would want to see. I'm struggling with that a little bit.
Well, but we're still just asking questions at this point.
Yeah,
right?
we're still
This additional
asking
question is
questions.
just information, right?
Yeah, I don't, for what it's worth, and I'm thinking, and Chris, please jump in if you if you're remembering otherwise or from your own experience, but from our conversations with, with the whole team of people that we're working with, I don't think they would be surprised to be asked to include this kind of a question. And I don't think it will, I think there will be a round, they ask a lot of questions, I guess is my point, in their polling. And so I don't think it will pop out as a, this isn't what we talked about at all. I don't think it will, nor is it not what we talked about, because conversations did happen around this topic. So, you know, it could be that there are some other things that we talked about, the task force, that they'll add into to find out, you know, that didn't rise to the top, but they're going to want to ask the community, how important are these things to you?
Can I just want to say one thing.
Sure.
Jason, what you stated actually did come up in the group, in that second committee. Of all the things that were discussed, that was the one thing that I was asked, what could be done outside of a referendum? And that was it, because its scope is small, it's a one-time expenditure, and it's the smallest one. You know, the other ones can't be. You know, they're too large, and with an equity lens, you can't do that. You can't do those other things outside of that. So it was identified as something that was a small ticket item, if you will, that it might not be the flagship of a discussion. Hey, this is something that we want to lead with, but it could be something that is still a broad goal, and it could be something that we still prioritize going forward. And I think that was definitely a discussion point.
Yeah.
And it sounds like just because of how we share land, and I don't know if this is true of all schools, so I'm being very Grays Lake-centric here, and I want to acknowledge it's one of 7, but how we do share land with municipalities, that there's potentially some partnerships there that could be also in terms of cost sharing and et cetera, just like we do with, I know the Park District uses, you know, we have an agreement with Park District, but we have some great examples of how Park District has, you know, it's been a shared cost and a shared use. And I think, you know, are those opportunities to also further make those things more affordable and just part of what we budget for and what we do as part of our overall budget. I'd be 100% for that too.
So I'm glad you brought that up, because that's actually one of the things that one of our village trustees brought up. They adopted a 50-50, or they extended the 50-50 tree replacement program, so our schools do qualify for that. I think we already know that. So I think there's probably a lot of opportunity. I think it's a great idea. Thank you.
So just to encapsulate, before we move on to the next agenda item, is we're going to add that question for the consultants to put out there to collect information.
Yes. Yes. Because I don't want to disappoint you, board, and want to make sure that we have clarity here. We're in the process of creating presentations like the one you saw today, that, unless you direct me otherwise, will not include these sustainability efforts, because those topics weren't what rose to the top. But that doesn't mean that we can't pull it. And so that's what we would be doing. Okay. All right.
Thank you. All right, moving on to the new business items for this evening. We first have the board policies on the list. Do I need to read each of those? No. Okay. I don't remember. I never remember. Yes, you sit down. Yeah. I will if you want me to. In French?
Okay. All right. Hang on a second. Let me just get to the right place. All right. The policy committee met at 5:30 today. So the majority, all but one actually, of the policies that you're looking at came through the press update 112. There were a few that had some very, very minor word changes that were related to just legal references or, In one case, it was, we used to call teachers certified staff, but now we call teachers licensed staff, so that was the change, those kinds of things. And then the rest of them are all 5-year reviews. I do want to bring 3 of them to your attention, because we may come back to them at the next meeting. One was the procurement, it's 2170, procurement of architectural, engineering, and land surveying services. It was the request of Mrs. Miller, and I understand Mrs. Nash as well. I know you weren't there, but for the 2 of them to be able to discuss that one, to see if, excuse me, if there was any changes that they wanted to recommend. I will note that Mr. Wildman did share that everything in that incredibly short policy is directly related to law, and we really don't have a lot of flexibility there. We have other procurement policies where we may have a little bit lengthier ones that we may have more leeway, although probably not a lot. So that one may come back. I wanted to share that with you. The next one that I wanted to point out is policy, hold on, it's the transportation policy, 4110. That one we are going to bring back next time with some language changes. We are having some discussion about those changes and are going to run a few things past our attorney, but here's the high-level information there. There's language in there about staff members shall not transport students, and it currently says without something to the effect of without the express permission of administrators. And we've had recommendations from both our legal team and our liability insurance company that having staff members ever transport students is not a good idea when they are working as staff members, right? Not when it's a parent who's picking up their neighbor and they happen to live in their community, that's a different matter, but a staff member transporting a child when they are acting as a staff member. And that's for 2 reasons. One, because if there were a car accident, our liability insurance would not cover that accident. And also, in this day and age, you really don't want staff members, adults, to be in a vehicle alone with a child. That's never a good idea. So we are going to be regrouping with our attorneys about the revision of some language there. So we'll bring that back to you. And the final one, this is very simple, is the bullying policy. So the bullying policy, it's 7180, prevention in response to bullying, intimidation, and harassment. That one you approved back in, I believe it was February, and we're not making any recommendations to change it at this time. The reason it's on here is that every year we are required as a school district to go through that specific policy and make sure that it meets all of the mandatory requirements through the state of Illinois. Well, no surprise, it always does because we use press, right? So our bullying policy meets the requirements of the law. Regardless, every year, Sue Walker goes through the policy, makes sure that everything is supposed to be there. I believe, Sue, you even have to check boxes, right, when you submit it to the state. So she submits it to ISB and says, yes, it does. It does meet all those requirements. She's been quietly doing that, and we realized we should actually just let you know that she does that every year. So that's what this one is about. It's going to come off next board meeting. You're not going to vote on it. There's no reason to, because you did that last February. And in fact, we have reason to believe, based on some changes in law, that press will be bringing us even a revised policy sometime in the next 6 months or so, and then you'll see some new ones. So that's it for policy. Any questions there?
I do have a question.
Yes.
It's with regards to 6:240.
Yes.
And this is just a clarifying question for me, and you may do this as a delegate, Dr. Glickman, I'm just not aware. But with regards to the trips that are over 200-mile radius that requires prior approval from the board, how are the 8th grade class trips at GMS handled?
So I suspect that you're thinking of the one class trip which is to Washington DC, which is actually not a GMS class trip. It is a trip that's organized out from a separate entity that we let our students know about.
Gotcha, so it's not
It's
connected.
not sponsored by the school district, correct.
Asking for a parent that's sending her second kid
Say it again?
in the summer.
Say it again?
I said asking for a parent who's sending now her second kid.
Ah, there you go. Yes, yep. Yeah, it's not, sometimes that company will hire some of our staff to take the kids, to be a part of it, so that actual adults that know the children are in charge of the children. That seems like a good idea, but it's not a District 46 initiative.
Gotcha, thank you.
Sure.
I learn something every day. All right, thank you. Next item on new business is the contracts with Train for controls, support service, and scheduled service support. Mr. Wildman?
Thank you. You might have heard we've put some BAS systems in. You've heard it 7 times tonight already. So I just actually looked, and the cost of putting one in at Avon last year and the 6 over the summer was actually $2.5 million. So 2.5 of the 9.2 has been building automation systems in all 7 of our buildings. As you can probably guess, they're quite sophisticated pieces of equipment. You saw the old stuff coming out and you saw the new stuff going in. We would like to make sure that we are optimized. We would like to make sure that we have all the right support from Train, and these 2 contracts that we have on the agenda for you this evening provide that. It is both of them in tandem are a lot of money, and I think there's a little bit of a scare factor here about, and I detailed in the memo what we were currently spending with Johnson Controls and what we will be spending with Train. But I do want to stress that these contracts are for 5 years and they have a certain amount of flexibility. So when we were discussing this with our Train rep, he did state, for the first year you probably want to have this amount of coverage. And we have a brand new Director of Operations and Maintenance. We have new staff who will be needing the support to make sure that everything is optimized in the buildings, as well as the predictive maintenance and all the other good stuff that's mentioned in both the detailed proposals. So I don't believe we're going to be having both these agreements at this cost over 5 years, but we definitely need it now. So I think that's the commitment that we need alongside with the investment of these systems in our buildings. Because without that, they're only as good as what we can do with them. And the support that Train's going to give us overnight, 24 hours, as well as the ability to make sure that things are running correctly is really what we're asking you for, that support. So there is an increase in dollars, but I don't believe, both me and Roberto have talked about this, we don't think this is going to be a long-term expense.
Any questions or comments?
I have a question. I know that when we had engaged with Train originally, that I believe there was some commitment recognizing that, we were kind of learning and growing, that they would be providing supports just as a part of that. Has that goodwill expired? Has that term on that initial support service that we've already paid for run out?
So in terms of the warranty of the equipment, I think that's still there. That still exists if there's any issues. Well, this is to making sure that we're running the systems correctly and we're actually getting the best out of what we've just invested in.
Yeah, so I guess that's, maybe I didn't ask quite clearly. Let me say it this way. So under the original purchase that we made, did we not have a professional services support line item that was included for our staff?
So we had a agreement with Johnson Controls, which the district terminated under the previous director. So he informed me that it wasn't a good arrangement for the district, and we terminated that arrangement because it wasn't fitting with what we were paying for. So we actually don't have an arrangement right now. So we need something to support going forward from the predictive maintenance side. Then we have the additional component, which is an extra contract this evening we're bringing to you, which is, hey, how do we work these controls? And that's in addition to those assessments that we did during, remember all those ones that we produced, all 7? You know, that, hey, this is the roadmap that we produced with WALD. So Train has done a lot of work for us in telling us, hey, this is where your buildings are today, and this is where they need to be tomorrow in terms of that HVAC and our air quality roadmap. So that still exists. Those assessments are still valid. The building automation system is some of the things that we've talked about, like the air handling units at Avon, and some of the other things that we've done, the handling units at GMS 2 years ago. All those things were in those assessments. So those assessments are still valid. They still support that. It's the ongoing maintenance that we need, which is when we need technicians to come out and help us with the controls. This is what those agreements do.
Okay, and last thing, so do you know what's the delta between what this is going to cost us and what we are no longer expending with Johnson Controls?
Yes, we were spending 66,584.73, and the first year of this agreement is 159. So it's $100,000 increase.
Okay.
Which is the majority of that is 90,000, which is on the controls. Sorry, on the scheduled service side.
Okay.
Now I do want to stress as well that there was a change in scope. So the scope that we were paying for was, I don't want to go into why we terminated a vendor agreement, but it wasn't right for us, and we weren't getting what we paid for. So it was 2 parts of it. This is right size for our district today, but it's scalable back based on us learning a little bit more about how to use those systems.
I think one of the things that I can add about the pricing from Johnson Controls in the past is that some of the buildings were still pneumatics, right? So they weren't in the automation system, and that's why the cost was lower versus where it's at now. And basically, you know, as you saw in the presentation, all the buildings have been upgraded with the automation system, and that's why you see a big price increase on that agreement and the service agreement as well.
Thank you both.
Yeah, I think I was having some trouble earlier too, because there's this control system that controls and regulates other pieces of capital equipment, right? Like air handling units, coolers, everything else. So I think, Ms. Nash, when you were talking about in the original purchase, were you talking about the purchase of the underlying pieces of equipment, like a boiler, for instance? Okay. But we're talking about service and support on the control system itself, not the underlying pieces of equipment.
I thought that was a line item in our purchase that we had, like a managed service
Of the control
line
system.
item, yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. I don't have a question. I'm talking out loud. Thank you.
It does not. So this is the additional cost of having a BAS.
Okay, thank you. Next item is the contract with IT Savvy for the Chrome Care warranty with accidental damage. Ms. Pelsor.
Hello. So this contract is a warranty for accidental damage for our student Chromebook devices. With this warranty, it will help extend the life of our Chromebooks. As I briefly mentioned before, in our master technology plan, there was a 3-year refresh cycle. And with this extra coverage, we believe that we can extend that refresh cycle to 4 years. Making this change will save about $62,000 in repairs every year over our current repair plan with VT services. And over a 4-year cycle with the refresh change, we'll save $450,000 in hardware purchases. All combined, it's about $698,000 in savings over 4 years, and it will, reduce our environmental impact with fewer devices being used.
Questions or comments? That was nice. $600,000, good.
I'll comment that.
That'll offset the control system. Yeah. There you go. Solved it.
I just wanted to comment that I liked that you brought up, I appreciated that you brought up environmental as well as fiscal responsibility. So thank you.
I appreciated that too, and was wondering if there were other environmental impacts other than the obvious of not using as many devices, or was it more than that?
Nope, it's mostly just a lot less devices over 4 years and extending that out as well. So, yep.
Could you articulate how this allows us to extend our cycle to 4 years from 3? I'm not sure I'm able to make that connection.
So this will allow us to maintain our devices in better shape than it would have before. So our previous repair agreement didn't necessarily cover the accidental damage, and there was a lot of things. We currently have about 500 devices during our Chromebook collection that need repair. And if we had this in place prior to this year, would have just been repaired as part of this agreement.
All right. Thank you. Security camera system at Park Campus is the next item.
That's also me. So back in 2021, the Safety and Security Committee assessed the needs of every school for an updated security camera system, and it's also part of the Master Technology Plan. As you know, last summer the cameras were updated at GMS, which was identified as the highest priority building. This contract is for the Park Campus security cameras, which is identified as the second highest priority. The operations team and technology teams will work together to accomplish this project.
What's our summary of the impact of the cameras at GMS? Like, what kinds of things what kinds of positive impacts have we seen from that investment? I'm just curious.
Yeah, no, I can talk about that. I can only speak about it anecdotally, frankly, but we've had a number of situations where things have happened that we've just been able to go back and watch how it really happened. So there may be a report of how something happened, and actually the camera shows a different report, or sometimes it confirms exactly what was stated. We had some serious events that we were very glad to have been able to review the video.
That's exactly what I was thinking, but just wanted to validate.
Nope,
so
absolutely,
thank you.
We were very glad to have them. Yes,
it's a risk mitigation.
100%.
On so many fronts.
Yep.
Yeah.
Is the student body aware of the presence of the cameras?
Yeah, in fact,
is it acting as a deterrence at all?
Well, not sure I can answer that question. However, lots of questions. But actually, there are signs on the front door at GMS alerting people to the security cameras. So yes.
All right. The last item on the discussion, new business for tonight, is the timing structure of Board of Education meetings. You want me to lead this one?
I do.
Yeah, I will. So this was something that we talked about on and off for a number of years, just in terms of certain meetings going on for long periods of time. And so I had an opportunity to speak with each individual board member to get a sense of some things that we've talked about and some ideas on the table. So all the board members are aware of it and have been responsive to it in each of those conversations. And there are a couple suggestions that have come out of that in my conversations with Dr. Glickman as well, in terms of part of this is being sure that we respect everybody's time late into an evening after a long day at work, and that especially is pertinent to the staff who come here for the board meetings. Now, obviously, we do them twice a month, but they can be long, and the busy days are certainly adding on. One of the large things that I think and I don't know that we need to, is this something that we can consent on, or do we have to vote? I don't know that we have to vote. So one of the things that has come to the top is to move the board meeting back a half an hour to begin at 6 p.m. instead of 6:30. I think we have board members have, I believe, as I've talked to everybody, schedules that would allow that to happen. I think the 6:30 time was from previous board members who were further away from getting to the board meeting. And I think starting at 6 o'clock potentially would alleviate some of those things. So if we have a long meeting or a lengthy meeting, we would be looking at, 9 o'clock instead of 10 o'clock or 10:30 in some of those meetings. That also, I think, would benefit the board as well. If we have a closed session, we would not, be here until 10:30 or quarter to 11 in the evening. So that was one potential solution that we all talked about as well. And again, these were individual conversations, so we all presented the same solutions as well. A couple of other suggestions as well was some of the timing around the presentations that occur at the board meeting. And I know that the Illinois Association of School Boards is always fond of reminding us that this is a business meeting for the board and not necessarily a business meeting for the public. So it just happens to be held in public. So we also talked about the student recognition ceremonies, which are critically important to us as a board and have been a really positive new piece to this year. But they shouldn't be going on for 30 to 45 minutes in any given situation. So we would also recommend that we would, have some type of limit on those presentations, and potentially also encourage that we do one recognition at each board meeting instead of 2 or 3 teams at one time, for spacing purposes as well as for, being able to hand out things. And then we would, I believe the conversation that Dr. Glickman and I have would be that those student recognition presentations would be no longer than 5 to 10 minutes at top. An additional recommendation as well was non-district presentations, so non-district staff presentations. So individuals that we invite in to do a presentation that did not directly relate to the work of the district team. We also would look at those as probably being limited, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, to 10 minutes. Of course, again, with any of this, with the exception of maybe the movement of the time to 6 o'clock and some of these others, we can be flexible. If we need a longer presentation, we can have one. But I think it's reasonable to, as a board, to get that higher level thinking from those presentations. If it is a district presentation, district staff, so anything we heard tonight, right? We were looking at, again, they can go longer if need be. That's not the intent of this conversation, but we would be looking at a 20-minute time limit. But that one is incredibly flexible as well, because the work of the district is exactly why we sit here at the table. So that one is immensely flexible, depending on what we are going. And I have a feeling some of our presentations coming up are going to be long anyways. So that allows for grace and room on that type of thing. Then the final piece was the board reports, because we need to also monitor ourselves as well. And so in the board reporting section, which is just at the beginning of the agenda, sharing out something that we have observed in the district or something that we have attended in the community would be no longer than 5 minutes. We have, as you can see from the questions tonight, we have plenty of conversation in all of the board items. Just as an example, if each of us gives a 10-minute board report, we're going on for 70 minutes. So keeping that in a 3 to 5 minute range, just for those quick celebrations or observations, might be a good way to, as well, shorten some of those pieces. With all of that said, and including in all the conversations I've had with each of the board members, that again is not to state that some of those might not go longer as the situation permits. But some of the research that I've done a little bit in terms of best practices for board meetings is the later you get into the evening, the more impacted your decision-making becomes, and it's hard to think clearly if you're approaching 10 or 11 o'clock in the evening. I also consulted my father, who has been on many board meetings and boards over his life, and he said a good board meeting is one that stays on track, a better board meeting is one that ends early, and the best board meeting is one that is canceled. So we can go with that one as well. If we ever need that, We can go with that one as well. So I put that up in my office. So that, I think I hit all of them, and I think all of those conversations is what I also had with each individual, and including Jim, who's not here tonight, but those are the pieces that would help. From my conversations, individual conversations with the board members, it seemed that we had consent on some of those, with the big one being moving back to 6 o'clock. Are there any additional comments or questions or anything that any of my esteemed colleagues would like to offer up this evening? Yes, very esteemed.
So yeah, I'm generally supportive of what you talked about. I'm just kind of curious, where do these guidelines for the timing of certain kinds of conversation or certain kind of presentations live? Do they live informally as informal norms? They live informally when we engage with an outside person and say, oh, by the way, we'd love for you to come to speak with us, and if you wouldn't mind, keep your conversation.
I do. I think there. I don't know. I could go back. I think this was a couple of Triple I conferences ago. Unless it was another conference I went to, but it was something on Robert's Rules or effective
Rules of Order.
board management, and there was just I know IASB has commented before on maintaining, timing so that the board can get through its business. Most of that, I think, for us at least, just based on our informal lived experience, is where those times come from. But I do think that there's timing measures through Robert's Rules that keep the board moving forward.
But I'm thinking.
But
Yeah, I'm thinking about your question, and aside from that, I think they can live informally just by the conversations we have. So it's very easy for, I'm the one who works with our staff on student presentations. I will tell them 10 minutes max, like that's easy, right? They all work with me on scheduling student presentations to come. So it will be easy to say, yeah, we're going to limit it to one at a time. So that kind of stuff is pretty easy. Frankly, knowing we were having this conversation, the administration, we timed our presentations. We wanted to see what does 20 minutes feel like. I believe our friend Roberto came in at about 5 minutes and 23 seconds today. He was pretty quick. And, knowing that the presentation that we provided last week in our special board meeting could never have been done in 20 minutes, but you understand that, right? But everything we did tonight, there was no reason for it to go even nearly 20 minutes, and nothing did.
I'm glad you said that, because that's the category of presentation I really want to talk about. Was there would be no chance that we would forego important information
100%.
in that category of presentation.
No, and frankly, I think we would, we're going to continue to be mindful of it. And if we're coming before you and we know it's going to go on longer, we'll probably just tell you, board, we know we've typically agreed to keep these to 20 minutes. This one, we won't be able to because of the content, and we'll just tell you that ahead of time. And then the non-district presentations, typically I'm involved in connecting with those people, and we'll just tell them, we're so glad to hear from you, and we ask for you to keep it to 10 minutes. And we've never done that before, and you know what? Things have gone on a long time, so right? So I don't think that'll be problematic at all.
And our esteemed board president reserves the right to move us along at any time.
There it is.
that's probably one of the things I'd have to do too.
I do want to ask a question about the 6 o'clock time, and please know your administration will be delighted with the 6 o'clock time. I didn't ask for it, right? Please make that
Correct.
public.
That
None
was
of this
me.
came from me.
Nope,
Okay,
it was all me.
All right, but I do want to just confirm with the board, if we move to a 6 o'clock time, that will mean that committee meetings, when we have them, will start at 5. Will that be problematic for our board? Not normally, okay. And we don't have them all that often, but I just wanted to make that clear. Okay, great.
Was any consideration given to that 6 o'clock time as it relates to public participation? Like, I don't really think there's a difference between 6 and 6:30 as it relates to anyone who might want to view or attend a board meeting, right? Does everyone agree with that? I mean, lots of our after-school activities or community activities
would
start
be
at 6 o'clock or earlier, And so this doesn't present any sort of hardship or doesn't limit participation in any way.
I can't imagine it
Yeah.
would. Thank you, esteemed colleague.
And they're recorded.
They're right.
So if we're going to make this change, yes?
No, go ahead.
Yes, I just want to make this suggestion that we actually make this change for the second board meeting in September, only because of public comment and wanting to make sure that our community knows this. So we're talking about it now. We can talk about it again at the next board meeting. That information can go in the newsletter, right? So that we just let our families know about that a bunch of times before we do it. I don't want anyone to ever feel like we just weren't transparent about something.
That was going to be my comment, yeah.
Well, look at that.
Posting it,
Look at that.
all that stuff.
Yes.
So.
We don't vote on the schedule, do we?
Oh, we do vote on the
So do we
schedule,
need
so
to
we
vote
probably need to
maybe
bring
amend
it.
the
Thank
schedule?
you. Right, I would think so, yes. Sue, I'm looking at Leslie, I'm looking at Sue. Okay, perfect. Which is perfect, and that's a
Thanks,
perfect
Sue.
reason to then make the change the following board meeting.
So then for September 20th would be the first meeting
Yes.
at 6 p.m.
That stated, we will keep our presentations to 20 minutes at that next meeting, and
I'll keep my board report to 3 minutes.
there you go, perfect, perfect. Great.
Thank you to the board members for having that conversation. I know it's on and off something we've talked about for as long as I've been on the board, but I think it's a potentially positive change for the staff especially, and for all of us who are working hard during the day too. So, thank you. All right, that's a topic for a future agenda
I
item.
just added it. All right, so.
And then there was,
Where's that?
yeah.
Okay, so at the September 6th board meeting, which will start at 6:30, right? We'll bring back the board calendar. Amanda's going to provide us with an update on tech projects. We're looking forward to that. Amy is bringing forth an e-learning resolution. Is that for voting, that one? Can you explain that? I think that would be helpful for the board.
I can.
Thank you.
So e-learning plans for ISB, for Illinois State Board of Education, have to be approved. They're approved for a 3-year basis. So the last one went through the 22-23 school year. So we need to approve the next 3-year e-learning plan. So I will bring that to you for you to approve that. The biggest difference is really looking at defining remote learning and e-learning, because when that was approved initially, we were still in remote learning. And so other than that, it just gives us the opportunity for inclement weather and emergency days to be able to go into e-learning.
Also at the next board meeting, we're going to bring back the topic of student representation on the Board of Education. So that topic was discussed in July, but we didn't have a full board. We had a quorum, but not a full board, and we agreed it made sense to talk about that again when we have everybody together. So we'll do that in September. Contract approvals for Train, IT Savvy, Forward Edge, and that's all I have for that one. On September 20th, we'll do the fiscal year 24 final budget public hearing. That's all I have at the moment on that one. There'll be plenty more, I'm sure. And along with, by the way, as I mentioned earlier, ongoing updates regarding the funding proposal. So you should just expect that at most meetings. It'll just be a running agenda item. And then I did note for the future, with no date attached at the moment, the solar updates. I know that came from one board member, and I should have asked, is that the request of all board members? It's been pretty common, so that you'd want that, so I assumed you did. Yes.
Could I add to that request just
Sure.
a little bit, or clarify it too? I mean, with the update on the solar panels with an eye towards kind of an ROI type of view, like how's it performing financially for us? Because it was, we had big hopes for it financially, and I just want to see how that's going.
Yeah, no, we understood that from you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep. Anything else? Okay.
Do we have any public comments? I don't think so. And we have no closed session this evening, so I need a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Okay.
LaCroy,
Aye.
Nash,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Mack,
Aye.
Albert,
Aye.
and Braden.
Aye.
Meeting adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.